Uh, Thank you, Vinay sir, from your end. Just before I introduce the resource persons of today's session, I just take some time to just highlight on the today's event, just to give the overview to the participants about the today's event.
Yeah.
So I welcome all the participants for today's session, and it is mainly we'll be knowing more about API. That is, in short, we'll be calling it as an API. So we main abbreviated as application programming interface. So in short, everyone are known with as an API. It is just a simple related to a software development and innovation by enabling application to exchange data functionality easily and securely. So API mainly enables companies to open up their application data and functionality to external third-party developers, business partners, and internal departments with their companies. This allows services and products to communicate with each other and leverage each other's data and functionality through a documented interface. So developers do not need to know how an API is implemented. Simply, they make use of interface to communicate with their products and services. That's what's incorrect, and the APIs are known with all the people. So any API, what you can call it, is a set of defined rules, and it explains the computers or application to communicate with one another. So it is mainly an it is an application which sits between the web server and acts as an intermediate layer that process the data transfers between the system. So because the API allows companies to open up access to their resources, so while maintaining security and control, they have come up a valuable aspect of today's modern business. So with this, just a brief overview. So the resource person is also giving some hands-on experience on the popular tool called Postman, which is an testing API. It is an easy to use with a graphical environment. So it is mainly used to send API requests to and receive the response to your request. So it is completely today you will be learning about a Postman tool and API development platform with various built-in features which is available with the Postman tool, and it is also supports every stage of API lifecycle in today's modern business. So not only about the Postman, not only these features, it also allows to design, mock, debug, automated testing, monitor and publish APIs, everything from one place. So that is what some information about the Postman tool. So by attending this session, so I am sure that you'll be knowing more what exactly the API is, why it is used, and how it can be made use with the use of the popular tool called Postman testing tool. So that is what the highlight of today's session. So thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time and making us to organize this session. So I hand over now to Vasant sir to just brief about the today's resource person. Thank you one and all.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Dr. Shivasan. I would like to welcome Ms. Soumya Siddharmurthy for today's session. She is the resource person for today's workshop. Ms. Soumya Siddharmurthy is STET manager at LITO with 13 plus years of experience handling product development and quality activities for diverse software solutions like ERP, SaaS, mobile apps, web applications. So she has a proven track record of successful implementations of result-driven test processes, mentoring the teams in achieving good return on investment from automation. So being an accessibility advocate, Soumya is keen on driving inclusive software development. So I would like to welcome Madam Soumya. Now I would like to hand over the session to Soumya. Madam, please carry on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we did a very good start, and you're spending the rest 2 hours with me to know something about API. And I hope to make the session a little bit more engaging with you guys, so that you can take back a bit of a learning, and this will be helpful maybe for any job that you land up if you're planning to be a part of a tech industry. Cool. So let's move ahead. I have prepared a set of some deck, and I try to keep it as concise as possible so that I don't bore you and take you to the exciting part of showing you what happens behind the scenes and see the kitchen and not just the decorated food which we being served that we see as a part of the browser. Okay, cool. So we're all set, and I want to tell you two things. One is life always shows left side when we plan the right. So if there are any glitches, if there are something that I kind of miss and try to come back to the initial stage, it's all cool. So it usually happens. And the second part is I'm recording the session. If you want to come online, show your face in the video, it's fine. If you do not want, that's fine as well. So let's go ahead. How does that go? All right. So before I move on, it's important that you know who I am. So Vasan sir has already introduced me, but these are some of the touch points that you can find me maybe after session if you still want to connect, want to know a little bit more about the industry. I also write some blogs. I'm part of the mentoring club. I usually guide students to see which way they have to go, what they have to pick. They come with a lot of questions, which I've been doing. All these places, all my information sharing and knowledge sharing is free. I've been doing this for quite a long period now. Being connected with students and trying to bridge this gap, especially with regards to the API, because that's kind of something like a heart of any application and development, no matter which spectrum of development you're choosing from this tech industry. So there I am. So now I'm gonna stop this boasting and move ahead for the next slide. Now, since you have given 2 hours of your time to me, which is so important of your life, I also would like to take this responsibility to tell you what I'll be doing as a part of this session, what you can expect, and how we are making this flow so that you get a heads up what you can expect, right? So I already spoke about myself. So next, I'll give a little sneak peek of how it was when I started engineering, which is 17 years ago, and then how it is now, and what's the technological trends that's happening, how it is moving, and what is the impact of API in all these changes is what we'll see in the sneak peek. I'll also want to take you through the drive for the present trends of developments. Of course, you would have heard of all the jargons, AI, ML, deep learning, I mean, whatnot. There's so many things, spectrum of objects that's coming in every day, so much to learn and exciting things. And finally, we'll come to a concept of API a little bit that I can tell you something theoretically and then take you back to the kitchen sink to show you how it's actually implemented behind the scenes through the network tab of your browser. We'll try to understand the client server architecture and why this is important and why most companies are taking this digital transformation curve where they want an online space and everybody wants to have their business online and how this can be supported in the larger scale. Yeah, the juicy part of this session is the hands-on, where I want to take you on a ride with the Postman tool. So this is a free tool, pretty much widely used in the industry simply because it's easily available. It's a lightweight tool, and it helps in the software development of your APIs as well as the testing, monitoring. You can make use of developing your documentations, group sharing. I mean, this tool comes with multiple aspects of it. So let's see how much of it that we can cover, and then a little gyan about myself before I leave this call, just considering myself as a senior in this industry. So I'll take that opportunity to give you a 10 minutes gyan if possible. Q&A if you have any questions, of course, and then we'll bid goodbye to each other to do rock our lives and do great things, right? So this is our session. Okay, so let's get started to know a little bit more about this industry. So like I said, I started my engineering 17 years ago. And then when I remember my first mobile phone that I had, the luxury that I had was to send messages. So from one phone to another, that's all, like which Vodafone used to give me 100 free messages a month. And that's a kind of a luxury. Apart from that, the mobile was used only for calling, nothing else. But if you see the present situation today, you pretty much do everything in your mobile, right from seeing a video, making a TikTok videos, uploading it to some Instagram or Twitter or any of your other social media accounts, applying for the job, shopping, applying for the scholarships, your college, your results, pretty much everything is driven through your mobile. So much has happened over a period of time. So it's been more than a decade, things have changed. So what is driving this change? How is it possible that we were able to achieve this change in such a short span of time? And the time you see when initially the browsers used to spin in the data for you, it used to take quite a while to show some data. I'm not really sure if you guys still connect to what I'm telling, because these were the issues that we had while we were growing up or doing our engineering. And mostly I used to do my projects sitting in front of a big laptop and having a CPU running with a lot of noise. That's a kind of the engineering that I remember. But now I think it's pretty much everything in the tablets. You have the Samsung or iPad, which can be converted to your development environment as well. And also for your free Netflix sharing or social media and things like that. So many things are still happening, and the world is moving ahead of it. This is a present situation, but there is something else that's happening ahead as well. And all these things are driven by there's one simple factor that is also, which is an API, which I will come to that part. But in this, I'm trying to highlight that irrespective of which touch point you're using to do shopping or your apps, your gym or healthcare subscription, I don't know what not, it can be any type of applications. It's going to hit something in the back end to fetch you the details, correct? So there are multiple touch points that we use on a day-to-day lives to reach a single source of information. And this information is shared on multiple devices consistently without any change. And we are able to achieve this only because these things are driven behind by API. You still may have this question, what is this API? Why is she not talking about this API first if that is so important? Let me give you. So it's important that I bring up this heat before I come to the actual part of the API. And then you will be able to understand why this is the hero of the show, especially in the tech industry. So now moving ahead, when we talk about the APIs, there are different APIs, like Sir mentioned. One is the open API, which you already mentioned, but I also would like to tell you that APIs can come in a various forms, shapes, and sizes, depending on the usage or depending on the ownership, depending on the structure or the framework that is being used. So it's as simple as telling, I can divide this class based on your name, based on your grades, based on the color of the dress you're wearing. So you're all the same, but the parameter I'm using to differentiate you is different. Likewise, for APIs, there are various parameters based on which we can differentiate them. But the one which is widely used is based on the ownership. Internal APIs are something which is used to develop your own web applications, and it is not something that is opened up to outside. For example, your college applications, you click in nmit.ac.in. I hope that's the right URL. When you do it, all the college details are shown up as a part of your UI. You can see everything, all your lecturers, the information, the admissions, everything is shown. So this API that is driving this entire application of NMIT College is an internal API. So it's purely used to make this web application work and nothing else. The other thing is a partner API, so which usually that you can find mostly in the large scale industries or the large scale tech companies. Here, there is an agreement, there is a license being made between two companies who say, all right, so we will do things together. For example, Google can do a partnership with Microsoft to come up with a different product, and they come into an agreement that, all right, so I'm going to develop this API and you're going to support me as a part of your OS in this way. So they come up with an agreement and they stick to this. So that those are the partner APIs. And then finally is an open API, which is the widely in rage nowadays, which Sir very popularly mentioned, that open APIs are something which is open for general public. So tomorrow, you as a budding software developer, you want to come out, make your own web application, your own business, and then you want to connect it with a Twitter or Google or Instagram or TikTok, whatnot, or a Boomerang, whichever the application it is, you need to have an access to reach their environment. So that is possible only using this open API. So as the name says, open does not mean entirely open and you can do whatever you want. It's not like that. There is a trust that is involved, and there is always a code which will be parsed through before they approve these APIs to actually use their environment or connect to them. So, but the takeaway from this slide for you should be that when you are in the final year of engineering, or you're someone who's interested to build in your own web applications or your own business, at some point in time, you may have to consume these open APIs and then use it. So just maybe after this session, spend some more time to know how this open API works, what are these, and familiarize yourself. It can be a good asset for you in the long run. Some of the places that you can check this open API is developer.google.com or developer.twitter.com. So they would have mentioned all the open APIs which you can use and collaborate with them to build your own applications. Moving ahead, there is the APIs can also be divided based on the structure and the framework of it. So this is another famous way of conversing in the tech world or the IT industry. They say REST API, RPC, SOAP UI. So if you hear any of these words anywhere you are, just know that they are talking about these APIs. And REST APIs are usually used to develop the web-based applications and most widely used in your e-commerce applications. When you go for the Amazon.com or Ajio.com, Flipkart.com, wherever it is, most of the times you see REST APIs in picture and in action. So do not get confused or overwhelmed with so many keywords here, but just so you make note of it so that whenever you have time, you can always get back to it and see what each of these do. RPC is not usually used in the general public arena. It is something that is used within the companies when they develop the larger softwares or solutions. It is called remote procedural calls, and it is not something that is easily understandable by hobbyists who get in to do some coding, and it's of no use for them. It's actually for the industry to industry kind of way of working, and it comes with a lot of business functions and security checks, etc. So that's not something that I will be diving too deep in today's session, because it's of no use right away unless you join some organization who's trying to do some bigger solution or product. SOAP is again something which is used within the industry. It's not that you come across on a day-to-day basis everywhere, but these, the takeaway from this slide should be, these are the frameworks or structures which define how an API should be developed. Like, for example, you speak, maybe you speak French and I speak Dutch, and we don't understand. There is no point. Then we will not be able to collaborate in any way. But then if you bring in the Google translator in between, you tell everything to the Google translator in French, and then it translates to me in Dutch. And then I talk in Dutch, it translates for you in English, in French. So what actually is happening here is we are trying to bring in one common framework which can listen to us and then translate it to something that you can understand. That's exactly what happens with these structures, which means irrespective of how I am storing my data in my database, if I say I am following the REST API structure, it simply means whenever, no matter how I am storing my data in my database, when I share the data or details to you, I will follow this structure. I will abide by this framework and then pass the data. So that is a generic understanding that will be there. So if I am a developer and you are a developer, we both are trying to develop a software in combination. And then I say, I'm using SOAP UI as a part of my structure of these APIs. It simply means I'm following the rules that is defined in the SOAP UI structure. And that's how I will be communicating. So now it's a call from your side, whether you want to still stick with me working in the SOAP UI structure, or you want to find someone else who's working with the REST API structure. The other question is, if this is the case, should we have to only use REST API to REST API? Can we not just switch between REST and SOAP? Is it not possible? It is possible, but usually it takes an additional time for this conversion, for the maintenance, and there's a lot of other things that you may have to do in order to complete this whatever the development or the collaboration that you're trying to do. So people try to stick to the same framework or the structure when they're collaborating and they're working. So, so that it's easier for the maintenance and also easier for the understanding and collaboration. Okay. This is a simple visual representation of how API works behind the scene. It is not this easy. It can get as complex as it can behind the scenes. But for general understanding, this is how it is. The right side, what you're seeing is the laptop or the mobile. These are called the touch points. And in the tech industry, we call it as a client side. You're basically act as a client because you always have a query. You always want something. So in that way, you hold any of these devices, maybe desktop or a laptop or a mobile. It can be any of these touch points and you ask for the details. And then when the request goes in the backend, it hits the server to get you these details. But there is one agent who helps you do this. It takes your requests, it processes the request, and then it takes all the way back to the server to process this request, and then it serves you back. Now, coming from a traditional way of development, which was like 10, 12 years back, most of this data sanitization or checking for the errors was happening in the backend. So what used to happen, it used to take your request, like for example, you want to search for blue jeans in Amazon.com. You type blue jeans. Now, when you do this, it takes this query entirely to the backend. In the backend, the job was to check whether your input was right. Have you used the right characters? Is it allowed even? So there were so many checks that used to happen. If let's say you have given some special characters like flower brackets, star, 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 which does not mean anything, then it used to render back an error message. So it used to go until the back, process this, find if there is an error or if it's fine, and then it used to send back. For this entire process of the cycle of handling the details, just a second. Quite early in the morning here, sorry. So still not good. I'm sorry for that. This should be better. So it used to take a lot of time for the entire cycle to serve the data back. And that is why when you see the applications, which was 10 years back, it used to take a lot of time to serve the details. But now it's not like that. You want to search something, you want to buy something, everything is within seconds, few seconds. And that is what, and we want to reduce this time taken for the entire cycle of the data query, processing and rendering back as less as possible. That is what we are trying and moving ahead in that space. And that's why API makes it even more important for its existence, because it's only possible through APIs that you can achieve the speed. And the more the better with the APIs. Now, when we talk about the APIs, there are few things and few keywords that you may have to understand. I'm not sure how deep you are already as a part of this application programming interface, but not to worry. I think this is the last slide, and then I will be taking you directly to the action to show you what happens in behind the scenes or in the kitchen, how it is prepared. Okay. So when it comes to the API, the first thing that you should know, it will have something called a request. Of course, only if you have a request is when someone is gonna serve you with a response, correct? So, and like I said, day in, day out, what we are doing is just dealing with the data. Be it your Instagram, your Facebook, TikTok, Boomerang, whatever you're doing, it's just data. Data in all formats, shapes, and sizes. It can be text, video, audio, PDF, PPT, I don't know what not, or Unicode, it can be anything. So basically, we are dealing with the details or the data. And where is this data stored? Usually in the database. So when the data is stored in the database, you need a unique way of putting the data and taking away the data from the database. And that's possible making use of this API. That's the entire job of this API, is to communicate, receive information from you, process these details, go back to the database to do certain actions. These actions can be creating a new data, deleting a new data, an old data, or updating an existing data. So if I have to reach back, you must be having one subject called RDBMS. We had one, I think in the 5th semester. So this relational database, we have something called DML and DDL statements. So DML is here, which is data manipulation language, where APIs are used to manipulate the details present in your database. So that is done through your request. And this request has two things in it. One is the body and then one is the parameter. We'll come to it. just make note or get familiarized with this keyword. The other one is a response. When you have a question, the question will be served with an answer, correct? So now that's what we call it as a response. When an API gives you the response, it will have two states. One is a code, the other one is a status. Code is mostly technical. It does not relate to you. But status is something which can be explained in a general English so that everybody can understand. And then we have something called a method. When we create an API, we have to tell what it is supposed to do. Is it supposed to create a data? It is supposed to delete a data, update a data, or just do nothing, just go scan there and then come back. We can do a hell lot of things out of it. So this is the place which says what this API is supposed to do, which is the method. And then finally is the headers. Headers is a very interesting concept, which I will show you with an example where the headers comes into the picture. All right. So like I said, I think this is the last slide. Okay, this should be the last one. Okay. So I promise this should be the last one. So I spoke about the response and the response codes. Generally, in the industry, the understanding is some response codes are already given as a part of the framework or the structure, or you as a developer can create your own response codes. But you have to create the response codes more responsibly. If you want to create any response, which is mostly an informational message, then you have to provide the code anything between 100 to 199. If the code starts with 100 or if it starts with 1, it simply means you want to provide some information. If you want to explain that the API was a success, it was able to do what you were supposed to do, then you start the response with 2. Anything which starts with 200 to 299, which means success. And anything which starts with 3 is nothing but a redirections. When we do a business, we may start a business with some domain, stitchmyshirt.com. But after some day, your business will pick up so much that you want to go international, and then you may have to change the domain name so that it is locatable with multiple people and they can access your website. And then you decide, you know what, I will change it to mysuit.com. So stitchmyshirt.com to mysuit.com, you're changing the domain. When you're doing this, it's mostly like you're changing the house, but people still have to find you and your business. To do that, you use this codes which starts with 3, anything between 300 to 399, which tells the server that, you know what, initially I was called X, now I am called Y. So if there is someone who is searching for me with the name X, tell them that I have changed my name as Y. That is what this status code does. So you as a developer tomorrow in the industry, you want to give a success message, but then you choose 334, then it is wrong. So you should understand, if it is anything with regards to success, you have to use and start the numbers with 2. And anything with regards to information for the server regarding the redirections, the change of the domain names, then it should start with 3. And if there is any client error, now who is a client? I am the client, because I am the one who's using the browser to do my actions, correct? So if I have some issues with my queries, then my error should be given with 400. Anything which starts with 400 to 499 is the error which is generated from the client, which is my side. My input may be wrong. The details I'm trying to ask may be wrong. I'm trying to find a person who's not even existing. So that is a wrong input that I'm trying to key in a search. Then it is 4, which means the client side error. Then 5, it's a server side error. So server is a place where most of the business functions takes place. Your input is right, everything is fine, but then in server something happens. Server went in a shutdown, or server was not able to run the program which was actually hosted in its place. So in those cases, we give the error 500. Knowing this is important. You need not have to try to memorize every number and code here, because there are plethora of URLs available in the market where you can just Google in and then check. One famous one is this Mozilla, where we all land up seeing for the status codes when we do development, and when we do coding, we key in the right status codes and response codes to tell the user that whether it worked or it didn't work. Now that is a lot of talking. I can give a break to take a question if you have any, or I can move on to show you how this happens in action, taking one example, maybe an Amazon.com or a Flipkart, and see how this happens behind the scenes and show you how API works. Do you guys still see my screen?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I am trying to share. Okay. So this is your client, correct? Anything that happens in a browser is a client. And then there is a server sitting somewhere behind who takes my question through this Google client and then some response. Now let's take some generic example. Let's stick to Amazon because it's easier. So this is a domain I searched, and there is something that is being served for me, which is wonderful. Now what? I have something to search. Let's do that. Yeah, well, it served me something, right? Whether I want these details or not, but anything which matched the word jeans, it showed me. So this is a no-brainer. Okay, fine, this happens. So what great in it? The great part is you as a developer should go do a right click, go to the inspect, and then you have something called network. This is the place where the action happens. This is the place where you can see all the APIs working. This is the place you have to come and be more curious about this entire web page, how it is even working, which API calls are being made, what is actually happening. So this is a place where you have to come and check how it is working. Right. Now let us redo what we did. Okay. This time I will search. Just see, as in when I change something, there is something happening in the network tab. It simply means all my actions are being captured. It is trying to process and then stick with me and provide me the response in what I'm trying to do. So now this time I will search bowl in home and kitchen. This is, you can use this to clear your response or your network traffic that is coming in. I'll just do that and I'll start from the first. I'll search for the bowl. As soon as I click on the bowl, there is like the hell lot of calls that's happening. There's so many things that is getting loaded. And you can see whatever the action that has happened before rendering this page, this would have got executed. So now let us break this and see one thing at a time. We spoke a lot about response codes, correct? And the statuses. You see here, this is the column which tells what is happening when this call is made. Let me make it a little more. Okay. So now you see there is something that is happening. There's so many keywords just now we spoke about, correct? We spoke about the header. We spoke about request, method, then status code, correct? These are something that we just now spoke about. So when I key in my request or my search in Amazon.com, there was a URL which was generated, and then it says, I am doing a search in the Amazon. You need not have to try to remember everything in here, but just know that there is something called a request URL. Request URL is nothing but it's a place where you want to place your request so that you will be served with details. So that is what a request URL is. And then this is not the only one that we will be sending. There is something called request headers. We just now spoke about headers. Headers is something which can give you a lot more information about the question you're trying to make to the server. Now, it can be as big as it can, or it can be as little as it can, depending on the type of development and the solution that you're trying to aim. But some of the things which remains constant in most of these API calls as a part of the request header is the encoding. You're trying to tell what type of data you're trying to pass, what is the language you're trying to do the communication with, how the connection should be. Should you have to keep it alive, or do you see some malicious activity? That is why you want to end this connection. So the connection speaks about that, and there are some cookies. Now, cookies is a very important concept in any web application development. Let me say it's simply used to store the user details so that whenever you come back to the same website, it will tell you last time when you were here, you checked for the bowl. This time, what do you want? So it basically helps you in aiming and capturing the user details so that it can give you more nearer user experience. It's an entire topic in itself, so I will not dig deep here, but just so you know, if you land up in some development team in the future, cookies is something will become part of your life. So irrespective of which role you do, you will end up handling cookies. And then is a host origin. These are some of the details that is already sent. Then they will say, is it what type of platform being used? What was the operating system? What is the device that was used? And course is something cross-origin requesting site, which means there may be two different applications which are communicating. xyz.com is going to amazon.com. And now, so this is a different domain and amazon.com is a different domain. So if there is a request that is coming from a different domain, there is a question should be asked, am I allowing this to enter my network, or I have to restrict it? So if you block the course, which is cross-origin, the requests, that means you are not allowing any request that is coming from other than amazon.in. If that comes, then you immediately stop and close all your ways of communication with this, because it can be a malicious activity. So that's what course says. This is again a very deep topic in itself. You must be having Web 3.0 subject. I'm not sure. If you have, then this is something that you will be studying in that. And so fetch from same side, these both are related to each other. But understand one thing, when you send a request, it is not just the request. Behind the scenes, your browser will be attaching more details to your request and sending it to the server. Why is this important? Because this speaks security. This speaks authorization. Not everyone can just walk into the NMIT wearing a fake NMIT badge. Is it possible? No. There is a way that they will make it secure. You will have to be registered. You may have a hologram. You may have a particular registered ID for your college. This is likewise. So when you're doing the query, it ensures that you're doing it for your own reason and not to harm the business or not to harm the other users out there in the environment. So that is why the request header is very important. It passes the most important information about the security and authorization. And there is one other thing called response. Like I said, when you place a query, it should serve you with a response. When it serves you with a response, it also gives you back the response headers. You have something called request header, which is passed as part of your request. And then you have something called response headers, which the server gives you back. Most of the things can be repeating in this, but some of the things can be entirely purely information from the server, which developers may use as a part of their usual development. It makes no sense for the general public who are accessing the web application. But if you are a developer landing up doing some developments in the future, this becomes part of your life. So request headers and response headers are something which you may have to familiarize yourself very closely before starting the development practice. Now we also see few other tabs in here, which can give you a lot of information about what is happening behind the scenes. So before we move ahead, I want to also show you the request method. Like I showed you, APIs will have methods: get, put, post, delete, patch. There can be more than this, but these are widely used in a day in, day out purpose. So those methods that you can use it here. Right now, what I am doing is a post method. What is a post? I'm trying to put something in a server to find and give me the information. Or I may have to post a new details somewhere, create a new, like I want to create a new Aadhaar card details in my bank, then it is a post request. But I want to see if my Aadhaar card details is stored in the bank, then it is a get request. That is what this request method says. And we also spoke about status code. Status code tells you whether the API worked or not. Did it fail at any place? So anything which starts with 2, remember, it says success. So generally 99% of the cases, 200 is used as a success message to tell to the user that whatever you were trying to do, it worked. And that's why I have served you, and the status code is 200. So these are some of the calls which goes behind the scenes, but what we see is only the bowl, which is the search criteria, which is being clicked. And then there is a hell lot of network calls which happens, and the server also gives you back with a lot of images, details about this, and then it serves you this web page. Just to form this web page, there is this number of network calls which goes behind, which means that number of APIs will be communicating with each other to serve you with the details. That is what this web application is speaking about. An assignment for you is after the session, maybe whenever you have time, just go into any web applications, or for that matter, any app, the mobile app. Try to open it, check behind the scenes which API is being called, what details is being passed, what is happening in the backend. So you get to know how this entire application is built. You may not know the interior details of this application, but at least you know what API calls are called, how the data is being passed, how this data is being served, what are the uses of this status code and the status responses, etc. Because when you land up in any team to develop something, this is something that you will see day in, day out, maybe even like 8 hours of your work. You will spend your day seeing this. Few other things that I also want you to get familiarized with is something like a payload. So payload carries all the details that you're trying to either put or take. That is all what we do from a part of API, correct? That is what we do with regards to the data in the database. So payload is a keyword that we use to say, these are the details that I'm sending to you. So in my payload, I am sending something, my search term, which was bowl, you can see, and then some other information also. Now let's take some other website, maybe Flipkart. That's what I can relate to. Again, let's go to their kitchen to see what they are cooking. Oh, there's so many things that's happened. So just because they're already showing some error, I want to gather your attention here. You see there is a call which has gone, but then it has given you 406. So like I said, anything which starts with 4 is a client side issue, which has been triggered from your browser. There is something wrong which has happened. Whether the application is failing or not is a different thing. This can be some internal call which has taken place from the browser, and that call didn't work. That is why it is giving you the error which says 406, which means it's not applicable. And it has triggered this error. To know more about these details, maybe you can go to the payload to check what is that, why is this error is being triggered. There, you can see most of these details can get a little bit overwhelming and some cryptic. You may not understand now, but if you're part of the team, just looking at this message, you will be able to find out, okay, there's something failing as a part of my code, which I have to fix it. Then you have response to see what this error was, which can give you something more in details. This structure, what you're seeing is called JSON. We'll come to it. But this is called a JSON structure. That is how the details will be shared as a part of the REST API. Like I said, you remember the common understanding that we do when we communicate. So for REST APIs, it is mostly JSON. Some companies use XML, but JSON is kind of like the market leader. People kind of use JSON structure. And these are the cookies, like I said, but this is something that you can explore yourself later. Okay, so when I'm here, let me clear out my network tab and then again do my search this time. Look, as soon as I click, there's already some action happening in the network tab, correct? I'm not interested in any of those. And this time I want to search mobile. Cool. This is nice because I get to see 302. So you remember what 302 is? Anything that starts with 3 simply mentions redirection, which means this call was supposed to be in a different URL, but it has got changed. And now I am taking you to the new URL. That is all what it says. The status code is 302 initially, but this has no effect on the user because this is happening behind the scenes, even without your knowledge. So, but you being a curious student, you should go behind the scenes to know what is happening here and what is the status code that I'm being served here. This was auto suggest, which it did all by itself. And then there is an event batch that is happening. You see that all these are APIs, which is running behind the scenes. And there is something that is happening in each of these To know why and what these APIs do, just go to the preview tab. There's no details here. Maybe response, there is nothing here as well. So let's go to each of these to check what it is. So now if you see, these are the images. These are not the API calls. These are the images that's being rendered to show you as a part of your UI. That's clearly known. But if you go here, these are the APIs which is being served. Again, there's a status code 302. Maybe this mobile phone was in a different URL before, but now it's being fetched from another URL, which got redirected, and you have been served with these details. Again, I want to grab your attention towards request headers and request response. Every call that goes from your browser to the server should be suffixed with these details. Without this, the call will not work. It simply means you're not authorizing the server to render you with the details that you are looking for. So this is the payload, which is again is cryptic. It's not required. It's something that's more technical in nature. What matters for you is only the search keyword that you have entered in here. And then the API do the rest of all the tasks. So I think we are 1 hour down already. Before I jump into the Postman to see why should you use Postman and how is it going to help you as a part of your developer or a tester or a product owner, whichever role you're going to assume after your engineering and land up in a tech industry, and how is this going to help you in the longer run? I can take a question or two before I jump onto the Postman. Do you have any questions? Are you clear? Because I give you a lot of information until now. So if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and then feel free to ask me. No questions? Is it so good that you understood everything?
Participants, if you have any question, you can unmute yourself and you can ask. If not possible, you can put a question in the chat window. You can raise the queries on the chat window.
Don't worry, there is no question called a stupid question, so it should be fine. So I should be so good today morning that you understood everything that I'm talking, which I am quite proud of, if that's the case. So let's say if you're in front of your system and if you can access, just go to the postman.com. And if you have already created user, then I will say you can easily log in. If not, it just take 2 minutes for you. This is a free tool. You can just use it, or you can just have a look what we do as a part of this. I already have a user. I use it personally also when I do my pet projects, and I use this also when I am working as a part of my company. I could have used any tool out in the market, but all the others can get a little more cryptic for you right now to understand at this stage. I am pretty sure as and when you move ahead in your career, you will pick up multiple other tools and programming languages, and then you try to find your way and communicate with the APIs most easily through the programming language that you're doing, be it C#, Python, or Java. But when you're new to a company, you may have to pick up a lot of information, understanding to serve the team or be part of the team as quick as possible. That's what your goal will be for the first 2 years. And you may have to keep some tools handy so that it helps you to understand and maneuver your path and make this transition easy for you. Postman is one such, pretty popular in the industry. I could have come up with an example of rest assured, making use of a Java code. I'm pretty sure you would all have dropped by now because you don't understand anything. It gets more technical, more deeper. I may start doing a deeper coding and it may go much above your head. But the entire aspect of this session is when you land up in a team, when you are asked to go through some documentation, find your way yourself before you start coding, it should help you in some way that you have hundreds of APIs and you want to understand what this API is doing, how these APIs are connected with each other, then Postman will help. This is one such easy light tool. Then you have plethora of options. Once you become master of one tool, you can start exploring other tools out there in the market. So it is always that first start, which is good. to start with. So if you have a user already, please try to log in. This is how a Postman looks. There is a lot of things that's happening in the UI. Don't worry about it. And your UI may differ than mine. Don't worry about it as well. But there are a few things that I will run through so that it's easier for you to, after this session, maybe work on some open APIs, try to analyze what that API do, try to understand the API documentation, and train yourself so that when you go to a company and when you are given a Confluence documentation to see what this API does, you already know how to do it. So that's the aim of this. Let's say, like I already spoke about the tool and its benefits for you personally. First thing we'll do is go to the workspace, and you can create your own workspace. Usually what happens, workspace is nothing but a place where you say, this is where I keep all my code, or this is a place where I come in every day to check my code, test my code, keep a monitor of my code. It can be any of this. So you can create anything. I will create maybe NMIT and 7th May. This is my workspace, and I'll just create a new workspace and I start working with that workspace. I can create a name. I will also add APIs to see how this works. This workspace can be made public or personal or private, depending on how you want to keep this. Public is pretty much open to everybody. Whoever has a link to your workspace can come and make use of your code. Or you can keep it within a team, like 5 of your friends. You want to make a group together, develop an API or an application, and then you have to collaborate and work, then you keep it as a team so that it's available only for 5 of you guys. You can make it private to keep it all to yourself so that no one knows what is happening. Similar wise is your personal, it's mostly yours. Let me create one. Oh, I should not have made a team, but anyways, and this is what you should be seeing. But what I will do is I will go to the one which I created, which is my supernova. I usually use this everywhere. And then I've created a folder called NMIT. So to create a folder, you simply have to create this. You just have to do this, and then you can create a new collection. Collection is nothing but like your bag. It keeps all your APIs in one place. I have so many collection, like API hands-on collection. I will share you this link for you to go back after this session, try your hands-on, do some requests, add some tests, and check what's happening with regards to this API. What is this API used for? NMIT is a collection which I'm using right now in this session to show you how to make use of this tool to understand what that API does. 30 days API challenge is a challenge that I took maybe to work. So it gives you a purpose why you have to use this. So it's mostly like a folder structure, nothing more than that. So I have created a collection of NMIT where I have used my first request. So this is an API. Before moving ahead, let's break this API structure. So what you see, it's mostly looks like a URL, correct? You say it's API and then you are showing me some URL. That is, so every house should have an address. I have a house in address in Amsterdam, right? And that's how you can reach me. Likewise, if you want to place a question in a server, you should have an address and an endpoint, correct? And that's what this is exactly doing. So let's see this. Most of the time, 99% of the time, the first few part of this URL is called as a base URL, which is a main address. I am telling you, I live in Amsterdam, which is cool. But in Amsterdam, if you have to come to a particular area, I have to tell you where. So I live in a place called Amstelveen. So now that becomes an endpoint. So this is a base URL, which remains constant because in Amstelveen, it's not only my house. There are so many houses available in Amstelveen. And then, so many houses available in Amsterdam. And then there's an endpoint which says where in Amsterdam. I'm in a suburbs of Amsterdam called Amstelveen. So now that's what we call it as endpoint, base URL and endpoint. Both these is very important. If you make a call to an API or a server, without base URL, you will not be able to place any query or request or make your code work. Okay. Now, we also spoke about the methods, and there are so many methods being available here. But right now, what I'm trying to do is to get some details. what details I'm trying to get. I don't know. Let's see. So let's shoot this request and see what comes back to us. There is something that is being served for me. Let me break this up for you. When I call this API, which is called Chuck Norris IO jokes random, what am I supposed to serve? There's so many details that you can check. The section here, what you see is a response body. You can see what this API is serving you as a details. Now it is giving you some details here, and then you can see there is a status code, which means 200. My ask was successful and I am served with the data. It is also showing you the time taken for this entire execution from the query to the data being served. And then it is also shows you the size of the response being given. The size matters a lot because when a backend developer and a front-end developer is working, a backend developer can give you or throw you millions of data, but a front-end developer may have to parse through the entire data to find you one small bowl or one small jeans or whatever is your search criteria. It takes a lot of time. But rather, if you come in an agreement that, you know what, when I pass this request, you already do this job for me and give me the reduced list of data so that I can show it to my user, then there is a time that is being arrested and the details comes up to your UI much faster. So that is why the size of the response makes it all the more important for discussion between a UI developer and a backend developer so that they know how they have to work more closely and collaborate to make this application work faster, which naturally translates to the time taken for the entire execution. So that is what this tab is speaking. It is all the more very important when you get into an IT industry trying to develop stuff for them, and you have to keep a constant eye on these details because it matters a lot. Now let's look at the response. This entire section of this tool is a response body. And this response, like I said, can be served in different formats. But most naturally, 90% of the companies stick to the format called JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. What is it? It is nothing but a detail which is given between two curly brackets. But if you see the details, it is given as a part of a key and a value, and they come as a pair. That is why we call the keyword as a key value pair. When I give the details, I am giving you as a part of a key and as a part of a value. So when you as a developer want to use these details, you can choose only one which you want. For example, let's say you are doing a web development to take a URL and just post it as part of your web application. You're writing a blog and you just want this URL and want to put it as a part of your blog. Fine. And I will give you all these details for you. I have an icon URL. I have a URL for you. Now you as a developer or a front-end user, whoever it is, you can just use this icon underscore URL to fetch the details, and then you can upload it as a part of your UI. This is how we are communicating and collaborating. So this is a generic understanding, but this tool also, the beauty of a Postman is also you will be able to see it, the same data in different formats. This is how an XML looks like. The same details when it is served as a part of an XML looks like this. When it is part of HTML, it looks like this. When the same detail is served as a part of a text, pretty much looks as a blank text. So you may not see a difference between an XML and a text right now. When you try to access the details, there is a difference. It comes as an entire text, like a paragraph for you. It will not be split. You will not be able to break single things at once, like how you do using the JSON. So there is a different format and structure in which a response can be served. And usually it is JSON. And this tool will help you see the response in different ways, whichever is comfortable for you. But I will say stick to JSON because you have a value and a key and a value, which is stuck to each other. In your programming language, Postman usually uses JavaScript. But when you are a backend developer, you mostly make use of either a C#, Python, or Java because they are more structured programming language. So please concentrate on these subjects. If you already have come across, these are very important. They are the mostly used programming languages for the backend development. Usually for the front end, it's JavaScript. There is a variety of JavaScript that's come in: Vue.js, React.js, AngularJS. Knockout JS. There's so many JS tools that is coming in. But for the backend, it has always been more structured and strong programming languages like Java, Python, and C#. Okay, all said and done. Postman makes use of JavaScript because you can access these details are usually used and pushed towards the UI layer, and it's more easier to add in tests making use of a JavaScript. So that's the thing that's in the future, just so you can keep in mind. I also want to draw your attention towards this authorization tab. What is this authorization tab? So like I said, you remember internal API, partner API, and then I have open API. Most of the get operations is when you're trying to get some details like what we are doing right now. It's a harmless activity. It's basically you want to dig in some details and want to get the details. So we don't bother much. But when you want to post a data, which means you want to mess up with my database, then I want to know and be sure that you are the right person. For example, you want to write an exam in NMIT. Then I want to make sure that you are part of NMIT, correct? That you are registered, you have taken classes, you have minimum attendance. I have to check all these. This is authorization. Not any person who is walking around in the street of NMIT can come and give exam in your college. That's not how it is. So that is a responsible action we are trying to do. In the APIs, we give these authorizations, and these authorizations can be different ways. Don't worry, this can get more technical and more deeper. I don't want you to dive deep, but I want you to keep an eye on this, because without this, nothing is possible to work in IT industry. And this is very important because they don't run the business for charity. So things will not be open for everybody. You may have to work yourself behind firewalls, load balancers, and VPNs and stuff like that. So you will come across this authorization. Without authorization, you'll not be able to do your job as a developer or a tester or product owner, whatever it is. And this authorization are of different types, like OAuth authorization, bearer token, API key. Which one is the best? Depends on the type of solution that you're developing. So most of the serious business applications goes with OAuth type, or they also use JWT tokens. And these authorizations are usually, like I said, used during the post, delete, or put operations, because you're trying to mess up with my database. And if I have to be sure that you are the right person to do it, then I have to provide you the authorization. I'll try to do this if the time permits along as well. But because we are doing the get operation, which is a harmless activity, I'm not trying to harm anybody, but just fetch the information. There's no authorization I'm trying to give. So it's fine. I can still send the request and see what is that's coming in. So this is the detail that's coming in. Now, there are a few things, which is the documentation. I have not filled in anything here. When you're working together as a team, you have to tell what this API is doing, why this API should be used, what are the authorization restrictions and limitations this API should have. All these details you should provide. That is a part of your responsibility when you are in the team. So as a developer, it's not just scribbling some code to make it work, but it comes with a lot other fringe activities, like saving your code in the right format, making it look pretty with the right comments, spacing, indentations, documenting your code so that if you are no longer part of that team, or if you are no longer part of that company and move on, some other person who takes your position should be able to read through this documentation well, and then do his work or take this forward. So this is also a part of your job when you join a team. So here is a place where you can do the documentation. I can simply say, this API intends to serve the free jokes available through Chuck Norris. I mean, I'm just thinking loud and writing something. It may not make sense, but when you're doing a technical documentation, you may have to give something more than this. And then maybe you can mention endpoint is /random. So when I say endpoint is /random, what if I do only this? Do I mean just this? No, it's not going to serve anything, because you're telling Amstelveen, but where is Amstelveen? Amsterdam, North Holland. You need every other details. There can be Amstelveen in US. There can be one in South Africa. You never know. So you might have to give this base URL. And many times when we use this base URL again and again, we try to save it in some place so that, it can be reusable. This concept you would have come across in your Java, C#, in many other places, correct? So I will show you how you can save these as reusable variable as a part of a Postman. Not just Postman, you can do it in any programming language, but because we are taking reference as a Postman today, and I want to make you to make use of this tool as much possible so that you can understand the APIs available in the market. And so that is the whole reason why I'll be showing you how you can do it. But this is a documentation. So let's stick to this. And then let me save my documentation. So I saved my documentation and this will stay there. So tomorrow, whoever comes in wants to check this API can come to the documentation and say, okay, so this API is going to serve me some jokes, which I can make use of and then use it in my further programming, whatever I want to do. Then comments. When you're working together as a team, there will always be ifs and buts. What if we implement that way? What if we implement this way? It's not always what Soumya wants to implement. It's always what product needs or the solution needs. So collaboration is one main thing that happens within the development team. When that happens, it's important that you converse regularly. Nowadays, most of the work has become remote and async communication, which means you never know when one is available online and when is not. So we have to ensure that all relevant details are available so that we are not blocking somebody's work. We make use of such comments to leave a comment about this API and tell, you know what, you may have to change. Please change the created structure. I just want date and time. So I can leave this comment in here so that the other person who's already working on this API knows, okay, I may have to make these changes, or he may reply back to this. So it's basically a collaboration that is happening. So it's a no-brainer. It's pretty much the same. But when we do this, I also want you to look at something called params. What are these params? So when you remember when we did a search, we gave a search criteria. That is a parameter. I'm trying to search something, but what is it? That goes as a part of your parameters in your search. So anything which comes after question mark becomes a part of your search query, and it comes as a part of your trailing effect after the base URL and after the endpoint. I hope you're all with me and it's not too many things happening. If you want to try hands-on, I will try to put this as a part of the chat. If you are part of the Postman already, just try to use it. If you have not created a workspace, not to worry, just do new. It asks you some of the options. Just click on HTTP request. It gives you a blank screen. Copy paste this, choose method as get, copy paste this here, and then just do send. When you do it, it will serve you with the details that is required. Now, when we are doing this, yeah, we saw so many things. We spoke about authorization, headers. Headers is one thing which I told you, which will be part of your request and response, which will be added behind the scenes, which you don't have to work or worry about right now. This is the body, which is a payload, will come later. But after all these things, when you're working and developing the APIs, it is also important that you add the tests. You have to ensure that your API is working regularly without any problem. So usually when we are using a hardcore programming languages, we try and sit and do, we try to create an object, we try to access that object, we instantiate the object, we try to send the request and then generate the response. If the request is not able to hit the right servers, you might have to mock the server. There are so many things that should happen when you're handling it programmatically, and it can get difficult and over the board. One advantage with a Postman that is available for you is you have all these snippets already available in the left side, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel of creating the entire tests from the scratch. So today I am interested to check when I pass this request, my API serves me the right details and it gives me the status 200. If I have to provide this test, I simply can search for the respective test that is available here and then click. It just gets added. The test is added. The code, what you're seeing is JavaScript notation. But if you see, it's pretty much English and you will be able to understand. PM means Postman. And what I'm trying to do is test. So it starts, the method starts with the name pm.test, Postman test. And this is a description of your test. What are you trying to achieve with the test? I basically want to check whether this API worked and it is serving me status 200. Fine. That is the description. But tomorrow I can change it to Soumya also. Nobody's going to change, but try to keep it more sane so that you understand. And then is a function which specify what you are supposed to do. And what am I supposed to do is to check whether the status is served with 200 or not, because that means success. So there is a way that I have to fetch this response. Like I said, this section is called a response section. And in this response section, you are trying to access this number. And that is possible by doing PM, which is a Postman, dot, what you want? Response. Where is a response? Here. So you say PM dot response to have status. Now, this part of it is called as an assertion. If you go to Chai assertion, this is a library which is widely used as a part of JavaScript development, where when we want to check something and we want to place the checks, we make use of this assertion library. And this has a well-defined library already, which you can just make use of and then check if the details are coming right or not. Some of them is you can use the word should, or you can use the word expect, or you can use the word assert. This can get a little technical when you go for assert, but at least you should be able to understand what is a should and expect is. You're trying to say you should have the word bowl. You should have status code 200. So that's when it is a success. Otherwise, I am not considering it as a success. That is what you're trying to tell. So that is what is an assertion. Please make note of this. If you're interested in programming, if you're already doing some programs as a part of a JavaScript, this is a library that you can make use of to add assertions and ensure that your action is working fine or not. And Postman is using the same. So if you see, they're using a library called assertion library here to check if the status is 200. Now, fine. We all did this. Now I want to check if this is working fine or not. After my development of coding and everything, I also have to test my code, correct? So I just run this. Cool. I go to the test results and I check here. My status code is 200, correct? So that means my API is working fine. So it's good enough. And this comes under a part of maintenance. In the development lifecycle, you are given the requirement for development. I will say as a product owner, hey, you XYZ, I want an API which can get me the list of sales orders, all the sales orders for bowls. Okay. Now I will write an API which can go back to my database, can fetch all the sales that has happened over a period of time for bowls, and I will fetch the details. And then I'll try to give it to the UI developer so that he can show these details in the UI. This is how the usual baton passing happens in a development. But in this whole structure, I just can't develop and forget and go back home and say, okay, my job is done. Now I can sleep. But in the IT industry, what happens when you develop the code, the responsibility is on your shoulders to ensure your code is working and you are maintaining the code, because there's a constant changes and developments happening day in, day out. When this happens, you have to keep tab on the code that you have written. And tests are one easy way of keeping track of your code and to ensure that it is working fine. And that is why we make use of plethora of tools available in the market to ensure your life is easy. I can achieve the same thing making use of a core programming concept like C# or Java, but it takes a lot of time, effort, and maintenance. You're writing 10,000 lines of code, and to test that, you have to write another 20,000 lines of code. That gets too much. That is why we try to find a balance between these two to keep the maintenance as less time as possible. And tools like this, there are so many tools, but tools like this will help you. Start somewhere, start exploring, and then you may get into an affinity to one particular tool because you see it's easy to work with. Continue working with that. So this is just a starting point for you. Okay, I just got diverted back to somewhere. So I am adding my test to check my code is working fine. My test is working fine. Everything is cool. So I'll just say whatever the changes I did. Now, because this is the new session that I opened to show you to add the HTTP request, I'll try to save this. I'll give the name as NMIT underscore jokes underscore second, because it's the second time I'm trying to save. And I'll choose my collection where I want to save this, and then I'll save. Pretty much my code stays there. So this is the get operation. And get operation is a no-brainer. You can easily understand what happens. It's basically, it has to get. Let me take one other easy example. This is one other get API that is happening. If you see that there is an URL, which is api.getpostman.com. These APIs are used to get all the details about your Postman, correct? So if I have to work my way with this, I will just do, and then you see what it comes. It says authentication error, invalid API key. So which means I know you're trying to be harmless, but you know what? I am opening my database only to people who have access. So you know what? Right now, I am serving you 401, which is a client side issue, which means my issue of not providing an authorization status. So that is why I am served 401, and it's served within 132 milliseconds, and the size of the response is this. Now, when you see the response, it is again a JSON structure. And this time, this reply clearly states error. And then it tells what is the error. This error has two elements in it. One is the name and one is the message. The name is the name of the error, and then the message to elaborately explain why is this error happening. Now, if I have to use my authentication, right? So let me get the authentication. I kind of am guessing should be somewhere in account settings and API keys. And then I have to create an API. So I'll do a generate API key. I'm trying to authorize myself to tell Postman, hey, you know what? I have a user. So I will try to provide this key for you, not to worry. Then I will say NMIT. You can give any name, nothing to worry. And this key or the token that you're seeing should not be shared with anybody. I'm going to delete this after the session. Should not be shared with anybody. It should be known only to you, because anyone who gets access to this code will be able to meddle with your code. So you have to safeguard this by not sharing these details with anybody. So I am not sharing with you either. I will go to my collection here. This was the API that I was working. Now I have to provide authorization. I come to the authorization. What was the type of authorization that we were trying to work? It was API. Now let's see again. I'll just send this. It says API key, correct? So I go here, choose API key, and then X API key. So you remember, whenever we speak using the REST framework, we make use of JSON notation, which means there should be a key and there should be a value. So this is the key. X API value, X API key is a key, I'm telling you. And then this is the value. Now I will save this. Hopefully it should work. Let's try. Voila, it did work. So you see, I saved my API key. I authenticated myself. I told, you know what, I have a user. I am harmless. Please allow me. And then when I sent this request by passing this API key, I am able to see the response provided to me. Now, this response is a little different. How is this different? So we have, okay, we spoke about key value pairs in the response, which is great. But now if you see, there is the same type of details that is getting repeated over and over again, which simply means I have more workspaces. So I have private mock server workspace, and then I have a personal space, I have a team space. They have so many workspaces that I'm working with. API testing for dummy workspace, meetup workspace. I have created so many workspaces. So whatever I have created, everything it is showing as a part of this response. And when it is giving me the response, it is consistently showing ID, name, and type. It is giving me information about this workspace. If it is about the meetup workspace, this is the ID, this is the name, and this is the type. What is the type? While I'm creating the workspace, I told you it can be a team workspace, a public workspace, a private workspace, or a personal workspace. It can be any of that. So this is what it is trying to highlight, that when this workspace you're trying to access is having this ID with this name and this type. What am I going to do with this? It's up to me. Getting this information, I want to develop my own new workspace or try to do something else, making this information, or prepare a table showing how many workspaces I have created in my entire lifetime and what types of it is. If that is my intention, then I can make use of this response, create my own UI, feed my UI with these details in the loop. I basically have to loop through each of these details and show it as a part of my table. This is how a backend developer and the front-end developer work in collaboration to make things happen. So I serve the details from the backend, you take the details from me and then show it as a part of the UI. Be it error messages, be it information messages, be it responses, your search. It can be any business case, sale order, internal order, purchase, constructions, irrespective of the companies that you work with. This is how it's going to work. Cool. Again, there is a point where I'll take a small pit stop. If you have any questions, you can throw at me in the chat box or you can ask me directly. And then we can move ahead for another 15 minutes where I can open the floor openly for all the questions if you have any before I end the session. Go ahead if you have any questions. Hi, can you say please how to take URL at GET request? How to take URL at GET request? Shushmita, is it okay if you can elaborate this question for me? What do you mean by how to take URL at GET request? Do you mean how you will be able to find this URL? Cool. That's a good question, and I appreciate that. So whenever we are working with the APIs, like I said, so whenever we're working with the API, one of the major responsibility for any developer is to maintain the documentation and give as much details as possible so that the person who's consuming my API knows all the details about it. And if you go to any big companies now who are developing the cool softwares, be it AI, ML, DevOps, I don't know what not, just go to their website and check for their API. And then you should find this documentation. They will give you a clear documentation of how you can access their APIs, how you can use their APIs. So there is a Twitter API that is available. And if you go here, you should be able to see all their APIs available to you. They explain you. So this is the place where you have to go and find the URLs for yourself. If not, if you're working as a part of a company, irrespective of the company, they will provide you how you should be able to access this API as part of this documentation. Did this explain, or you still have a question? So you find these APIs here. So tomorrow you can create your own Twitter account. You can come to the Postman, make use of these by providing their authorization or OAuth tokens, and you can maintain the communication with Twitter. You can even be more cooler, you can create a Twitter account and then you can do the posting the Twitter instead of using the Twitter app. Use the Postman, call the post details, pass your authorization along with the message that you want to post, and try and see if it is visible for your friends using the tweets in their apps. I used to do all these things. That's how you explore stuff. And that's how you should be using these tools as well. Any other questions? Yes, you can use Google Analytics. So there is something like developer Trello. So I keep doing a lot of things. I keep like checking many APIs where I can tweak in or come up with my own applications. That's how we learn, right? So simply choose any tool or any application that you want to collaborate with, Boomerang, Instagram, whatever it is, and go for their developer documentation. If they are open to collaborate with a wider public, they will provide you the documentation, which is easily available for the outside market. Pick and you can create an account with them just to say that you are harmless and you're using it purely for your learning purpose or for your business purpose. And then they will give you the authorization and you can work with their APIs. Likewise, this is for Atlassian. And then you have Google Analytics. So Google developers, if you go here, you should be able to see, you can pick up any of these applications, and then you can get as many APIs. If you want to collaborate with Google Assistant, you can go to the Google Assistant, search the documentation, and fetch the details for yourself. Did this help, Shushmita? Or are you looking for anything more specific? That's cool. Now, I think rickres.in. So for most of the college students, what we do is we share this, what they say, we share this website, which is a sample and a free website, which can be used to play around with the understanding and knowledge of APIs. So you simply have to go create a free account here, and you have a list of APIs that they have mentioned. Some of these APIs are to create a user, delete a user, to delete and create a specific user, list all the users, and it'll also show you how your ideal response should be. So if your response has not been shown this way, then you can pretty much expect that there's something going wrong. And you can build your own, and you can collaborate your code with theirs, and build a nice application together. You simply have to go here, create your own user. Again, you will get a key. Use that key, put it as a part of your authorization, and then start collaborating. This is how it works. Is this good? Cool. I will assume it's good. So just in case if you're in front of your system and you want to explore a little bit more, so when you work as a part of the team, it is necessary that you collaborate between the code, correct? I have tried this, but a little confusing how to use for the real-time projects. It's a good question. So now I want to know what is a real-time project and what is it which is confusing for you. Shushmita, can you get on the call if you don't mind?
Hi, ma'am.
Yeah, hi Shushmita, tell me.
Actually, I'm doing a project based on ILU website.
Nice.
So that I have to do, so my mentor said to do on Postman. I've searched for some websites, ma'am, so I did not get how to take a GET request. It means they used a URL and GET request, so I've got there.
Wait, so which application are you trying to collaborate with?
ILU website, ma'am. It's client website, ma'am. We are doing a project. I'm working in a company.
Okay. So
ilu.dev.me, it will be the website that I have to be a
right?
Postman.
Ilu.
YILLU. .me.
.me?
Yes, ma'am. That's it.
So do they have the API documentation?
No, ma'am. Just I'm trying for it, for logging or register, how to do.
Here. Okay, so first, did you register here? So once you,
yes, ma'am.
So once you register, ideally it should be part of your account settings. When you go to your account, there should be something called API. So likewise, like I showed here in Postman, mostly by and large companies keep it here, but I'm not sure if ILU is doing it in a different way, but mostly it's in the account settings. You have to go to your user profile. And then when you go, you should be able to see something like this, or API tokens, or API authorization, something, or generate tokens, something they would have used on similar lines, which gives you information. Didn't you find this?
No, ma'am.
So I have only half an hour. I actually can spend time in creating a user and going in search of this, but I also have information to be sharing to the wider group. You can always connect to me offline as well in any of those forums, and I can work more closely with you on this. Is that okay, Shushmita?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I'm in LinkedIn. I'm in the mentoring session. You can find me from any of these places, and then just give me a shout out. We can work through. Okay.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so but I'm so glad that someone is doing something different and something more than the usual syllabus. This is how you'll be more connected to your work, so which is good. Where was I? So I was here adding the authorization key and trying to communicate with this Postman API and sending the request, and I'm getting the response, which is awesome. And I have a lot of details being repeated over a period of time, going one over the other. Now, me being a developer and as a part of a team, it's up to me and my creativity how I make use of this response being served to me, which is awesome. The next comes is, like I said, when you're working in a team, and if it is the same set of applications that you've been working, the base URL pretty much remains the same. So each time when you come, if you have to keep keying in the base URL, it is kind of boring and time consuming, isn't it? And tomorrow, like I said, if your company changes the name from stitchmysuit.com to myawesomesuit.com, every time you have to go to each of these APIs and you have to change the base URL. And that's time consuming. That's insane. No one would do that, isn't it? That's why we come up with this modular programming, reusable variables, and we have all these concepts. Likewise, we also have here one. This can be achieved programmatically. This can be achieved through Postman as well. So there is no difference, but how we are achieving this in the Postman is making use of the variable. We have different types of variable available in the Postman. We call it as environment variable, which pretty much is available for the entire environment, whichever APIs, wherever folder, whichever collection you're using, you can make use of. And then you have collection variables, which means it is restricted to pretty much to this collection and it will not go beyond that. If I have a variable here and I am trying to access in NMIT collection, it will not work. So that is a restriction. And then you have global variables, which means you have a variable which can be used pretty much within a list of APIs as a part of a group, then you can use global variables. But by and large, most of the time we make our way using environment variables simply because it's easy to set and remove the details. How do we create this is you see this I button here, you just click here and then you do add. When you add, it gives you again a key value pair kind of a view where you have the variable. I can give any name for this variable. Again, I will maintain it as NMIT because I am right now part of NMIT session. And then what I need is a base URL. Always remember when you are coding in any language, we encourage people to use camel casing. Camel casing is you start the word with the lower letter. And then when the next word comes, make use of the first letter should be a capital letter. So that's what is called camel casing. This is a good habit to do. And then there is something called an initial value. So what should be the value? For me, it is postman.com. I go here and I give here, it gets automatically copied to the current value, which is fine. But tomorrow, if something else changes, Postman, it becomes Postwoman. Then I simply have to come here and then change this URL. It gets applied to the entire list of places where I am using this variable. Now let us save this. Cool, that is done. Now what we have to do, we have created the URL, but if this URL has to work, we have to use it somewhere, correct? Otherwise it's not going to work, right? So where is it we are going to use is we are going to use in our request. We come here and this is the one which we did. To use the URL, there is a way to do it. You open two curly braces, provide the URL name, close the curly braces, then do that. If your implementation is right, when you hover over, it should show you the URL or the variable that you created. If it is showing an unresolved variable or an error, it simply means we have done something wrong. Right, let's go back and check what is the wrong that we have done. If you see in my URL, I already have a front slash. And again, I'm trying to give the front slash. Of course, it's an issue, correct? Let's remove it and then see if it got resolved. It still says that. Let's save. Oh, it's still saying me error. So let's get this sorted to see why I am getting the error again and again. Just give me a second. Is my name proper? It should, now I know why I have an error. And this is a classic problem for every developer. We created the environment, but we are not using the environment or calling the environment. So you see here, it says no environment, correct? And this I classically do every day. So when we create an environment, you have to go and then you have to choose which environment. I have created multiple. So now I have base URL in all this environment, correct? From where should you pick this base URL? You are not telling me. That is what the Postman is shouting at me. So I will tell, okay, I want it from NMIT. That's where I have saved it. And ideally, it should resolve my problem. Yes, it did. So you see, there is a base URL. You can see what's the initial value, current value, and what is the scope of it. It's pretty much available for the entire environment. So tomorrow or after some time, if I go to the 30 days API challenge and then try to execute some API here with the same environment, it may throw me an error. I'm not using the URL here, but in case if I use, then it'll throw me an error because the API has a different base URL here. So, and I should not be using. But the idea here is once you set the environment variable, you will pretty much be able to use this anywhere in your workbench. That is the idea. Okay, so now we are dealing with this. Let's stick with this and let's send a request to see if it works. It does work. So we created an environment variable. We saw how we can make use of environment variable. And if the variable is right, how it should behave. You should basically have this in green, all the details listed. If it is wrong, it is not going to respond to you or just throw some error for you. And then this is another way. Now, I said you, this is called as an endpoint. It's mostly telling there is hundreds of houses in a row and each house is named. All right. Now you want to find the place where Soumya is living and my house number is 5. I gave in a lot of details in this call, isn't it? No, but my house number is 5 and I have some 15 houses in this row. But which house do I live? So that's what endpoint says. You have so many collections and so many APIs. Which API are you trying to contact? And that's what this endpoint says. And I am trying to contact an endpoint called workspace and it has to get me something. But if I do some mistake in my endpoint and the name is not right, it simply says, you know what, the house you're trying to find is not here. I'm sorry. It says 404. So these are some nice things that you can do. So tomorrow, if you walk into any company, you have a project, you're an intern, and then you're asked to develop something throwing at you hundreds of APIs. You don't know where to start, what that API is doing. You basically can simply log into the Postman, get all their APIs here. There are multiple ways where you can get APIs. You need not have to keep clicking new, and keep adding it. There is another way of adding, which is also making use of, I think, JSON. Wait, you have something called import. Go to the import. Usually companies gives you a JSON file, like I said already, and you can import the JSON file using the upload file. And once you do it, it gives you the list of all the APIs that the company is working. It shows you already, and then you can make your way through it. There is another way of working. So if your team is working in the Postman already, and if they have 150 APIs, you can simply go, they will share you the link. Like, for example, this one. Let me leave this in the chat. So you can simply go to that API. You see this button like a fork. You can simply click on fork and then you can give some name, anything that matters to you so that you can remember you forked it. I'll simply say NMIT and my location where I want to save. Like I said, we all work in some workspace or in some collection. I will use this and then I'll say fork collection. When I do that, the entire thing comes and sits in my workbench. And then you can see the APIs gets copied here. So this is some easy ways and techniques that you can make your work and life easier when you're still starting off in an industry and trying to catch up with a lot of things that is happening around you and still stay afloat without getting overwhelmed. Then this can come a little handy. And like I said, irrespective of which role you land up, whether you're a developer, tester, product owner, of course, you'll not be a product owner right after you join. You mostly land up as a developer or a tester. Then a lot of your first few months goes in learning, in knowing things, in exploring. Then make use of such tools to explore, to know more and try more. So the transition becomes more faster. That's what companies are looking for. Someone who can get onto the job quick, someone who can come and just understand. So make use of such tools to help yourself to understand the code so that you can maneuver your path more smoother and easily in the industry. So this is cool. We are good until here. So before I have 2 more minutes before I open up this for Q&A. This I usually I run meetups, a lot of free meetups, basically helping people at different levels of learning to create an API, to test APIs using different tools, methodologies. It can be Node or it can be Java, C#, different concepts. But now, since you're students, maybe you can go ahead. You can clone this API hands-on. This is publicly available. You simply have to go to this link and fork this, come to this collection and simply fork it. It comes and sits in your workspace. And then I have given as much information as possible in each of these APIs, along with the tryout challenge. You can challenge yourself to see how much you understand from an API perspective. You start from here and slowly move on to the point of creating your own APIs, exposing the free APIs, collaborating with multiple people. And that's the way you can learn and do stuff more easily. So this is free. You can use it anytime. You have any questions, you can also leave a message for me here in Postman or in LinkedIn or in Mentoring Club or in my blog, anywhere. So I'm open and I'll try to reply to you as much possible and as quickly as possible. There was a lot I spoke today continuously. So I'll take a halt. If you have any questions, you can shoot at me for the next 15 minutes. Or at least say, was this even helpful? Hello, Samir, can you specify a few popular applications applicable with the API you have described? Thanks, Rahul. Okay, Saroja Mamas. Popular applications applicable with APIs you described. Okay, so Google Analytics, we use it. Like for my blog, I create my own blog and I write articles. We write articles to reach multiple people and spread the knowledge as much possible. So when I do that, I make use of Google Analytics to see the engagement ratio that is happening along with the crowd. I started it very recently, maybe 3-4 months back. So I try to reach as much crowd as possible through my social media network, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Mentoring Club, Postman, Sessions. So in all these spaces, wherever I leave the messages, I try and grab as much attention as possible. And to see if this attention is coming or not, if I'm able to give right details or not, I have to grab these information touch points somewhere. So I make use of Google Analytics to see the engagement ratio of the public and see if they're interested, how long they're trying to spend time in my blog, how long they're trying to stay in my YouTube videos. This is what I check on a personal note. In my professional journey, we make use of multiple open APIs. Like my company is Litho. We develop products for digital asset management, which basically helps marketing and creative people to prepare their templates, advertising, publishing, and stuff like that. So we open our API so that they can use our application in theirs, so that they don't have to go and search multiple solutions to work. So this is another, I'm not sure if you can relate, but these are some of the points where we come very closely working with APIs day to day. Can you tell me how you
very much, madam. Thank you very much for
thank you, Vasan sir.
session. I would like to now request our beloved Dr. Sarojini madam to deliver the vote of thanks. She was very much keen on organizing this event, and I hope this has made all the participants understand you understand and apply this in their career. Saroja madam.
So, good afternoon, everybody. It was very nice that Ms. Soumya Sridhar Murthy has given us an overview of all this API and the usage, taking interest on her own from Amsterdam to all of us. It was very enlightening and very useful, because people normally are talking about high-end things, but not this kind of really critical application oriented APIs, and it is useful for industry and also for the latest development and testing also, as madam mentioned, for products development and testing. It's very useful. And Postman API testing tool is also illustrated here. Even I have tried some of these things now, as madam was putting the links. Real-time scenarios are also illustrated, so people can really explore on this since HTML and all these things are catching up in the industry, and I have seen some low-code, no-code concept also coming up. So this is all very useful. I thank Mrs. Soumya for all these insightful talks, and I also thank our college administrators, principal in supporting all this. I thank our organizers, Sant Kumar sir and Sudarshan sir, in taking initiative to get this along to all our students. I actually wanted more students to join also. Nevertheless, I request all the participants to spread words to the others also. And this area is picking up in industry, and employability aspects are also there. So I thank all the participants and all involved in this. Thank you so much.
That's so true, ma'am. You have spoken 100% on point. This is something which industry looks for and not many know. We don't want people who say, I have done 100 lead codes, but people walk into the company